So basically, I'm just going to give you guys an update of the officer-involved shooting that happened October 28th of 2013. Our criminalistics investigators and our violent crimes investigators did a tremendous job trying to piece together the events of that evening. So our offender that evening was identified as Joaquin Ortega. Mr. Ortega lives in about the 400 block of Vassar Southeast. We know that he had came home, was very agitated. Allegedly, he was on prescription medication and alcohol. He loaded a handgun at that time, and he left his residence. Approximately 4:45 or so, we received 911 calls about shots being fired in the area of Lead and Vassar. We also received 911 calls of gunshots at Girard and Cole. Through the investigation, we were able to determine that there were actual bullet impacts to a house at the 2800 block of Cole. A witness reported a silver Hyundai or a Honda had run her off the road and ran other cars off the road in that location. The silver Hyundai or Honda, which you know now to be a Honda, ran a vehicle off the road at Cole and Solano. He then hit a curb and a fence at Zuni in Washington. Mr. Ortega, known to be the driver of that car, then hit a pole at Washington and Central. A female witness stated she stopped to check on the driver, and as the driver exited that vehicle, he attempted to take her vehicle. She immediately sped off. Another witness who saw the incident at that location saw Ortega stumble from his car carrying a handgun, and then reported that Mr. Ortega then walked or headed east on Central. Also, he witnessed or saw the handgun. He told us that he saw Ortega walk up to a 76-year-old or walk up to an elderly female at a bus stop on Central. The female was with a young child. We know the female to be 76-year-old with her 7-year-old grandchild. He pointed the gun at them and demanded her money. She gave him the money, and Ortega then continued to walk eastbound, attempting to get into other vehicles. He then confronted a gentleman at the muffler shop, pointed the gun at the man, and demanded a ride. The man puts up his arms and basically pleading with Ortega. He retreats to the back of his vehicle, and at this time, Officer Pitzer is arriving from the east on Central. He sees the commotion going on at the truck. He sees the description that was given earlier by our dispatch. He gets out of his car. He crosses south across Central. He then starts giving commands to the subject to show his hands. Ortega does not comply with Officer Pitzer's commands. In fact, according to witnesses and lapel cam video, Ortega tells him, quote, "Hell no." Ortega starts approaching Officer Pitzer. Ortega then stops, turns, and begins running toward the muffler shop. Ortega then, as he's running, turns westbound and runs to the front of two vehicles that are parked in the parking lot of that muffler shop. He then turns toward Officer Pitzer and clearly has a handgun in his right hand. This is Ortega. In his right hand, you can clearly see he's carrying a firearm. Officer Pitzer discharges his firearm as Ortega begins to turn and run between the two vehicles. Ortega then comes in front of the two vehicles, begins running to the west. He's met by Officer Pitzer. Ortega then begins to throw the gun in the air as Officer Pitzer discharges his firearm again. Ortega then continues to run to the south, where he falls to the ground. He was then taken into custody and transported with non-life-threatening injuries. Ortega was arrested on felony charges, and he will be facing federal charges. A search warrant was conducted on Ortega's vehicle. 7 casings were found inside that vehicle, along with the shotgun. And again, I want to thank our criminalistics detectives and our violent crimes detectives who did a tremendous job. We had different perspectives from witnesses out in the scene. They had to interview each and every one of those witnesses to try to get a timeline to figure out exactly where Mr. Ortega started to the conclusion of when Mr. Ortega was actually taken into custody. So at this time, I'll stand for any questions.
How many times did the officer fire his weapon?
He fired his weapon approximately 8 times.
And did Ortega actually point the gun at him?
No.
Was it determined if Ortega's gun was loaded?
Was it determined?
If Ortega's gun was loaded?
I don't know that answer at this point.
Do you know why the testimony of Jim Sutton, the muffler shop owner, was not included in the criminal complaint?
Well, we take the best information that we have at the time, and what we do is take the statements, we put them together, our detectives put them together to come up with probable cause and reasonable suspicion on that criminal complaint, and that's when an arrest is made. So you take the factual evidence and statements, the best statements you can at that time.
So the officer was looking for witnesses that would allow him to put aggravated assault on a police officer in the criminal complaint?
You said the officer? I don't understand your question.
I guess it was the officer wrote the criminal complaint. Okay, fine. So was the officer, when he was interviewing witnesses, was he looking for individuals and witnesses that might corroborate his charging of Ortega with aggravated assault against a police officer?
Your question doesn't make sense, but let me try to answer what I think you're trying to tell me or ask me. First and foremost, we have a multi-jurisdictional shoot team that comes out. So it's multiple people interviewing individuals that are unseen that were potential witnesses. And what they do is they put that information together to produce a case. And that case will go to the district attorney's office, and the district attorney's office then will prosecute if they feel that the case needs to be prosecuted. Does that answer your question?
How do officers prioritize which witnesses they end up putting in their criminal?
I don't think it's a matter of prioritization. I think it's a matter of gathering the best facts that you get at a scene. You gotta understand, a lot happens that night. There's a lot going on. There's multiple witnesses, and so they gather the best facts to put in that report. That's why these cases take a long time, because they're gathering all the information. They reconstruct the incident from beginning to end. So putting everything together to come up with the charges is basically what's being done.
When officers are getting a lot of contradictory witness testimony, how do they determine which are the best facts?
I think I answered that question, Pat.
Can you give me the criteria of what the best facts are?
What the best facts are?
Yeah.
You take the witnesses' statements, you put the witnesses' statements together, and you put a good case together, and you arrest somebody based on probable cause and reasonable suspicion that they committed that crime. The good part about our system is if a criminal complaint needs to be amended, we're allowed to amend it to either add charges or dismiss charges. The other set of eyes on it is the district attorney's office. The district attorney also has the opportunity to make that determination, whether to add charges or to drop charges. In the criminal complaint, you put the essential facts in the criminal complaint. So I guess, go ahead.
Is Jim Sutton's testimony going to be included in a supplemental report?
Everybody that was interviewed will be added to a report. Well, there would be no reason to exclude him.
Another question, sorry. In previous reports, I think it was stated that that Ortega had pointed his gun at the officer? Was there some confusion at first in the investigation whether or not he had actually pointed the gun at the officer that fired?
I guess my question would be, where'd you get that information from? Because when I gave my statement the night of the incident, I never said he pointed a gun at anybody.
Okay, so looking at the situation, you showed the picture that he had the gun in the right hand. Does that, I mean, from your perspective, does it look like that situation warranted the officer shooting at him?
So what you're actually asking me to do is a Monday night quarterback my officer, and the answer that I give you is the officer perceived a threat to himself and perceived a threat to the community, so he took the actions that he felt necessary at the time.
Chief Banks, I have to ask this. Earlier today, a federal search warrant was executed as part of a criminal investigation on an APD officer's home. How is APD involved in this investigation, and what is the status of that officer?
First and foremost, you know, that I don't appreciate that I'm trying to be ambushed. Let me answer this and finish this first, and then I'll respond to that, okay? Because now you're going to try to mix two things up at once, and I'll be more than happy to answer that question here in a second. Just additional in regards to this case, and I'll finish up, and I'll be more than happy to answer that question, is I'm also very proud of our department, because one of the things that we did, we found out is our 76-year-old victim that evening had the only money that she had on her stolen, and our detectives took that victim out that night and bought her groceries. Additionally, to find out that she is caring for that 7-year-old who actually lost one parent and the other parent isn't involved in his life. So one of our officers actually took him and got him a Halloween costume, and additionally took him out trick-or-treating. And that's what the Albuquerque Police Department is all about, is taking care of our community. And I'm very proud of those men and women of our department who stepped up without being asked to take care of a victim. So any other questions on this incident?
Was there more than one witness who said that Ortega fired on officers?
Was there more than one witness? There were several witnesses, and that's why we look at everybody's statement. Most important thing that we have for us is the lapel camera video.
Are you going to show them?
Am I going to show what?
The lapel camera video?
No, I'm not.
Why not?
Because for one, it's a piece of evidence, and I choose not to at this point.
We've been to multiple briefings like this where the chief has shown the lapel camera video.
And I appreciate that, Patrick, but I'm now the chief of police for this department, and I have the way that I'm going to do things my way, so I can appreciate the fact that my predecessor did things his way. I owe it to my officers to make sure that a case is done. I don't have to show all evidence because this case is an active case, and by presenting or trying to try this case in the media, I think is inappropriate. It needs to be tried in the court of law, and my officer needs to go through his administrative hearing, and I will respect that. So thank you for your question. Any other questions?
Chief, can you say how much money was stolen from the woman? Are you allowed to say?
I'd rather not, again, because it's an ongoing case, so thank you. Not a bad question, appreciate it. Any other questions on this incident? Thank you.
The Department of Justice is investigating the police department right now, looking specifically at use of force and also accountability mechanisms. Don't you think that it would be in the department's interest to take, and since that the news media have reported much about contradictory witness testimony, don't you think it'd be good to show the lapel camera video so that we can have an idea of exactly what happened?
No, but I think I've answered that question, but I will tell you this, and the unfortunate part is you wanted to find something negative with the Albuquerque Police Department, and that's really unfortunate because you want to continue to put us in a bad light. My concern is the fact that I have a convicted felon with a firearm terrorizing the city of Albuquerque and my community, and I would be more worried about others in this community that are going out as a convicted felon. Why are they out there? Why does he have a handgun in his hand as a convicted felon? That's the angle I would look at, as opposed to what did APD do wrong. So thank you. That's it on that October 28th incident.